Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Kepada yang terhormat Ketua Jurusan Pendidikan Sendera Tasik Fakultas Bahasa dan Seni Universitas Negeri Semarang, yang saya hormati pembicara kita, Miss Tintumol Joseph dari India. Welcome Miss Tintu, we are so honored to have you as our speaker. Dan pembicara kita, Profesor Dr. Muhammad Jazuli M. Hum dari UNES. Selamat datang, Prof. Dan yang saya hormati, Bapak Ibu peserta webinar yang berbahagia. Puji syukur marilah kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa taala yang telah melimpahkan rahmat sehingga pada hari ini kita dapat berjumpa dalam acara webinar siang hari ini. Izinkan saya terlebih dahulu menyapa Bapak dan Ibu dosen serta teman-teman mahasiswa dari berbagai perguruan tinggi, di antaranya Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Universitas Lampung, Universitas Makassar, Universitas Negeri Malang, Universitas Negeri Padang, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Universitas Negeri Surabaya, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, Universitas Islam Riau, UPGRIS Semarang, STKIP PGRI Banjarmasin, UIN Mataram, Untirta, Universitas Palangkaraya, Universitas Tanjung Pura, dan tidak lupa keluarga besar Universitas Negeri Semarang, serta universitas lain yang tidak bisa saya sebutkan satu persatu. Kemudian saya ingin menyapa pula para alumnus jurusan Pendidikan Sendera Tasik FPS UNES yang saat ini telah sukses dan tersebar di berbagai daerah di Indonesia. Kemudian saya juga ingin menyapa para pelatih tari, guru tari, dan pecinta tari di Indonesia. Terima kasih dan selamat datang dalam webinar dengan tema Indonesian Dance Combination of Theory and Practice. Perkenalkan, saya Lesa Paranti selaku moderator yang akan membantu jalannya webinar siang hari ini. Acara selanjutnya adalah lagu Indonesia Raya. Acara selanjutnya adalah sambutan Ketua Jurusan Pendidikan Sendera Tasik FPS UNES sekaligus membuka acara webinar. Kepada Bapak Dr. Udi Utomo MSI, disilahkan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pertama-tama marilah kita ucapkan puji syukur kehadirat Allah karena pada hari ini kita bisa berkumpul dalam keadaan sehat walafiat mengikuti kegiatan webinar seni ini. Yang saya hormati khususnya para narasumber, Miss Tintum dari India, Prof. Jazuli dari Pendidikan Sendera Tasik, Fakultas Bahasa dan Seni Universitas Negeri Semarang, serta yang berbahagia para peserta webinar, baik para dosen, para guru, para mahasiswa, alumni, para praktisi seni, para pemerhati bidang seni, dan tidak bisa saya sebutkan satu persatu. Berdasarkan data yang masuk di panitia, pada hari ini tercatat ada 16 perguruan tinggi seni yang terlibat dalam kegiatan seminar ini. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, kegiatan webinar ini merupakan salah satu realisasi kerjasama antara pemerintah India dengan pemerintah Indonesia. Universitas Negeri Semarang sebagai perguruan tinggi yang berwawasan konservasi, kegiatan ini merupakan salah satu kegiatan yang strategis merealisasikan kegiatan pelestarian budaya. Tentu saja kegiatan ini tidak bisa berjalan tanpa dukungan dari berbagai pihak. Oleh karena itu, pada kesempatan ini kami ucapkan terima kasih kepada Ibu Wati Istanti, SPD Mhum, selaku gugus kerjasama Fakultas Bahasa dan Seni, begitu juga kepada Dr. Sri Rezeki Urip Mhum yang telah memfasilitasi kegiatan ini. Ada 3 hal penting yang menjadi latar belakang kegiatan ini. Yang pertama, persoalan konservasi, yang kedua, kreativitas, dan yang ketiga, persoalan multikultur. Sebagai salah satu lembaga pendidikan, tentu saja lembaga pendidikan yang ada menjadi agen kebersinambungan proses konservasi. Selain itu, lembaga pendidikan seni juga bertanggung jawab di dalam menumbuh kembangkan kreativitas bagi para siswanya. Dan yang ketiga, keberagaman yang ada, globalisasi yang ada pada saat ini sangat terkait dengan persoalan multikultur. Dan satu-satunya kelembagaan yang bisa menangkap persoalan ini tentu saja lembaga pendidikan seni. Mudah-mudahan kegiatan webinar ini akan menjadi salah satu ajang diskusi untuk mencapai tujuan pendidikan dalam konteks konservasi, pembentukan kreativitas, dan penyelenggaraan pendidikan yang berbasis kepada multikultur. Hanya itu yang bisa saya sampaikan. Mudah-mudahan kegiatan ini bisa berjalan lancar. Baiklah, kita buka kegiatan webinar ini dengan bacaan basmalah bersama-sama. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Pak Udi yang telah berkenan menyambut dan membuka acara webinar pada siang hari ini. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu peserta webinar yang saya hormati, saya mempunyai sebuah quote dari Wayne Dyer yang cukup menginspirasi, yaitu, "When we dance, our purpose is not to get to certain place on the floor, but it's to enjoy each step along the way." Yang artinya, ketika kita menari, bukan hanya tentang kita bergerak di atas lantai, tapi tentang rasa yang kita ciptakan. Tari memiliki historis perjalanan yang panjang, tidak muncul begitu saja. Seperti halnya tari-tarian di Indonesia, yang ternyata memiliki keterkaitan dengan budaya India. Nah, seperti apakah keterkaitan itu? Kita akan simak pemaparan dari 2 narasumber yang luar biasa. Pembicara kita yang pertama adalah Miss Tintumol Joseph dari India. Beliau adalah seorang voice over, dancer, aktris dari India. Kita sangat beruntung beliau menyempatkan waktu hari ini. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now it is an honor to me to invite our first speaker, Miss Tintumol Joseph. She is going to present about Indonesian dance theory and practice. Okay, Miss Tintu?
Yes, yes.
You have 30 minutes to present. Are you
Sure.
ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Miss Tintu, the time is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. So, hello everyone. I am not an authority on all of the Indian dances. However, I have come to practice some of those dances over all these years. I hope I can encapsulate a few of the theory and practice and some of the similarities with Indonesian dance through this small talk. So, I think in India, dance is very much part of everyone's daily life. And even though they are not dancing as a performer, the elements of dance are present everywhere in our culture. Be it a simple wedding or a simple birthday party or a joy celebration, any kind of celebration, there is an element of dance in everything. However, after once you're a child, I heard one of my gurus say once that a child always dances. He jumps or she jumps. They are always running around, running about. But we would always tell them not to, because we want them to be to have that propriety, sense of propriety. We don't want the children to move around like that. We stop them, and then dance becomes something that we learn from somebody and we perform and everything. So if you actually see dance as something that is part of our everyday life, dance is everywhere. The nature is dancing, the wind is making everything dance, so is human beings. So for me, dance is a constant communication. It's not just performing. Every experience and communication has to be through the body. The intellect only is one part of the body. This was said by Sadono Waluyokusumo. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. This was said by one of the greatest Indonesian classical dancer. So, in the Indian context, from the Vedic age, dance has started. We have inscriptions, paintings, or monuments, or silver, what do you say, sculptures, which says that dance was part of our Vedic age. That predates something like 1000 BC. Since then, dance has been part of Indian history. So, dance in India was, again, it had a lot of religious connotation, like in Indonesia. I think that is one similarity, that we had religious, most of the dancing or any kind of cultural art forms was made basically to propagate religion, to speak about god, mythology, legends, folk tales, and fair, what do you say, myths basically. And eventually it got a social connotation too, where dance became part of how to express the inner turmoils of the folk art. All these things came up to speak about the what do you say, the pain and the agony of the oppressed, or the downtrodden. However, there is one want to say contestation, that dance was mostly a temple art form, that it only remained, only to constrained to temples and courts and royal setup. It was not so popular, and the popular dance forms were mostly folk dances, which was passed on from one generation to generation. And like you have the guru shishya parampara. I think guru, you call them guru, right, in Indonesia too. We also had something like that, that a guru will have his disciples, his students, and his form of dance is transferred to that group of disciples, and then that continues with each generation, and that's how dance has survived all these years. So I think in let me show you this. This is I can't show you. How do I go scroll down? Yeah, I think I can. Um, can I scroll down? Lisa, can you scroll down this for me?
Okay, until
Towards the previous one. Yes. So this, yes, this is Bhimbetka rock shelters. This is found in the central part of India, somewhere it's called Maharashtra. So this sculpture, this is not a sculpture. This is actually, no, not the other one. The other one, the painting, the rock one, Bhimbetku rock. Yes, rock shelters.
Yeah.
So if you look closely, you can see there are carvings of people dancing. So this is one of those earliest, what do you say, historical artifact, or rather monument we have to prove that dance was part of very ancient Indian culture. So can you move to the next one? That is the dancing. Yes. So dancing girl. This was, they when the Harappan and Mohenjo-daro civilization was discovered. This was one of those artifacts we got. This is a special kind of alloy. We do not yet know. I don't think we yet know which alloy it is made of. This is a dancing girl, and this when dated back. It I think it is believed to be made in 2000. 2300 to between this age, 1750 before BC. So in those ages itself, dance was very much part of Indian culture. So to have survived all these years and to have that, still we continue to have the original theory and practice in many of the dance forms that we have in India. These were codified in something called Natya Shastra, that is a book which speaks about drama, music, dance, and dramaturgy, stage basically. Can you move up, Lisa?
Okay.
One more slide up. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a treatise. It can be called like a Bible of, like a holy book of all cultural art forms, performances, performance. Um, what do you say? Performance arts of forms of performances. So this was written in the second and the fourth AD by somebody called Bharata. So it is called, there are four Vedas in India. This is considered a fifth Veda because it actually has a vast grammar of how dancers should, from the mudra, from a mudra to a step, using your feet, your step, to your expression, to your the story that has to be told, the acting, the drama, everything is mentioned. The costumes, the headgear, the makeup, the eye makeup, the what do you say, the ornaments, the little ornaments that we have. It's very similar to Indonesian. I'm sure you also have this. The classical Indonesian dancers have this golden, what do you say, um,
Kalung in Indonesia.
accessories,
Yeah,
yes,
accessories. Yeah.
headgears you have,
Sanggul. Yeah.
yes. So very similar to that, which is very interesting that even though we are separated by a big ocean, we still have a lot of similarities that goes into our cultural performances. So in Natya Shastra, it does not only talk about the theory part of it. It also speaks about the physical aspect of it, like how to, every movement is codified and mentioned there itself. And most of the dance forms still retain all those, grammar that we have for dance. We have a certain grammar, how to present a story, how to tell a story. So ultimately, this is all about storytelling, isn't it? Through dance, mostly during those days it was about telling a story about a king, story about a god, story about some war, some some kind of story. So I think storytelling is one of the most ancient art form in the entire world. Be it drama, be it music, be it dance, everything wanted to tell a story. So that's what. Can we move to the next one? Yeah. So according to Natya Shastra, there are three components. That is basically what decides what is an Indian dance. So Nritta means simple, in layman's language, you can say grooving. You'll just move to some kind of steps, and it is basically about how fast you can do it, how good you are. It's basically about steps. You just have a beat, a rhythm to which you dance. So this is mostly Nritta, which does not have any storytelling, it does not have any facial expression, it is not telling any emotions. The second one is called Nritya, which actually is about telling. So if you have to say that, for example, um, you are beautiful, you have to say you are beautiful, so you just use your face, your expressions, you're angry, you're scared, you're, all those kinds of. Here we use these kind of rasas, navras, and your facial expression, your body, and your hand gestures to tell a story. So if you say something like this, it is a kamal, right? You have a lotus. You show this one to say it's a deer. You would say this is to mention that it's moon. So similarly, a lot of things. So these are used to tell a story. The next one is natya. Natya is acting. So if I were to tell you that, um, I like a mother's instinct, there is a baby, so
Yeah.
you go and you touch the baby and you do this, They're saying your baby is beautiful. So you understand. So these are small little things to say a story. So these are the three components of basic classical Indian dancing. Can we move on to the next one? Yeah. So the Navrasa, I just mentioned them. So most of the storytelling, I think Indian Natya Shastra codified this into nine rasas, and actually some of the rasas were added on later. However, these are the nine rasas now we call Navras. So first one is Hasya. Hasya is to make fun of somebody. You know, you know that it's a happy moment. You know, happy kind of thing. Shoka is sorrow. Sorrow is sad, that kind of emotion. There is krodha. Krodha is anger, like you're burning with anger. Karuna is your compassionate. Your mother's love is, always compassionate. Bhibhatsa is disgust. You're like, you see a blood or a murder, or, you show that kind of. Bhaya is fear. You're scared. Veeram is courage, like a raja or a hero would, or a heroine would always have that kind of courage. And Shanta. Shanta is always a peaceful state of being where, you show there is absolute enlightenment or you are absolutely at peace with yourself and the world. Yes, so these are the navrasas which are used in Indian dance forms to depict a story, which is interesting because in Western dancing, mostly the facial expression remains same. It is always almost thigh bhav, which is like a constant expression of, like that. They don't show any kind of emotions. However, in Indian dancing, what makes it different? There is happiness or there is sadness. You tell a story and there is always the face is involved too much in Indian dancing. And perhaps that's why we have this extensive makeup. The eye is made up so much to show, if you know, your eyebrow, you move your eyebrows like that, you use your jaws, you use everything, every part of your body, of your face to express a bhava. So that is a similarity. I think even in Indonesian dance, the facial makeup is used, and always there is a pleasant face. And sometimes when there is that part of rasa thing is also involved in Indonesian, as far as I have seen, whatever classical and folk dances I have seen. Can we move on to the next? Next one. Yes. So these are the 8 dance forms of India, which are classical, which have, come down from the Vedic ages itself. So this is the first one is Bharatnatyam, which is I am a Bharatnatyam dancer. Bharatnatyam dance form is from the South India. So that is why perhaps, there are certain similarities, they say, between some of the Indonesian dances and Bharatnatyam, because I believe there were South Indian rulers who invaded or had their land, or they had conquered, or they had an extensive kingdom towards Indonesia. So there are certain elements of Bharatnatyam in Indonesian dances as far as surveys and not surveys, research goes. Kathakali is, again, you see the big one with the big headgear. That is another dance form of Kerala, which again mostly depicts mythological characters and mythological stories about Ramayana, Mahabharata. Ramayana, I'm sure you are also familiar with. Your dance forms also speaks about stories from Ramayana. There is Kathak. Kathak dance form is most of an Indian, northern Indian dance form. Manipuri, Odissi, Kuchipudi, Mohiniyattam, and Satriya. So among the South Indian dances, I think we all have, similarities in movements, in expressions, in clothing, and everything, and stories even. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm just giving you an idea of some dances. That's all. I can't tell you so much in little time. These are the folk dances of India, Bihu, Garba. And mind you, I don't know what is this dance form called, where you use your hand like that, which is the Indonesian dance form. Can you tell me, Lisa?
Ukal. Like that.
Which one? Yes.
Ukal.
Yes. So we have that kind of dancing, especially in Bihu. And they also wear something like that. They have this, what do you say? You have those clothes which are a full blouse and a sarong kind of thing. Full sarong. I don't know what is it called in.
Kain atau jari.
Yeah.
Jari.
Okay.
Indonesia
Jari.
calls jari. Yeah.
Okay, jari. See, we call them sari. Cherry
Yeah.
and sari. See
Yeah.
how similar they are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are used, and which means, we have so many similarities between these two
Yeah.
art, these two forms of dances. So there is Koli, Lavni, Gumar. These are some of the photographs that I am just showing it to you. Again, I can't. If I go to each story, each dance form, it has its own history and its own culture and everything. Shall we move on to the next? Yes. So I just gave a brief history of Indian dancing and what it comprises of. What mainly consists, what I want to speak about, or I found rather interesting, is about the comparison between India and Indonesia. So, as far as the history goes, there are many proof and surveys that has proven that India had trade relations with Indonesia 20 centuries ago, since 20 centuries, which means that, of course, we had we can't say naval, but we had a good sea trade. They used to travel through sea to trade with countries like Ceylon or Indonesia or Java or all these countries which are south to India. So these kind of trade relationships where they went to sell goods, barter goods, and gold and maybe spices or any kind, all these kinds of food materials and precious stuff, gold, silver, precious stones, that always left an impact on the culture. So there were cultural exchanges that dates back to 20 centuries ago. One of the main things are that we Indian kingdoms had also Sumatran and Javanese provinces. We had some of our kings came to Indonesia, and they had occupied the land in Java and Sumatra. So we had ambassadors going from India to Java and Sumatra. So likewise, this cultural exchange happened through political dominance and conquering of states. And Hindu, I think one religion that we have in common, other than of course Islam, is Hindu religion that transferred, and also Buddhism eventually, but Hindu religion and its mythological influence that went into Indonesia. So you all have, we have something called ballet, Ramayan ballet, in the southern part of India, which tells the stories of Rama or Sita or Krishna or all the mythological figures in Hindu mythology. And I think you also have some of them, and some of your classical dance forms use them in your dance forms. Those stories are told through dance dramas. So most of our dances are not just 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Our dance forms like last for hours, which actually tell the entire story during that time. So likewise, I think you also, your classical dances are also likewise dance dramas. So uh, one of the interesting facts that I came across was puppet dancing. That in India, if you will be surprised to know that every other state has puppet dancing, and in Indonesia, you already know that you have the quilt shadow puppet dance, and these puppet dances actually talks about Indian Ramayana and Mahabharata and all that. So, which means this must have happened through a cultural exchange, right? And these are also telling stories of legends or mythology or folk tales, and how the similarity is unmistakable. How it is so similar to the Indian culture. So another thing is, we have something called mask dance, the big headgear, and it is very energetic. I saw one of those dances by Indonesia. I saw a topping dance where the dancer was very energetic and swift movements and drum beats, and that is very similar to our chow. Chow is a dance form which actually shows that, and it's very aggressive. It is not that soft kind of dancing. Another is, again, I like I said, we have these mudras in India. Also, we have these mudras, and we keep our hands like that, we keep like that, we keep like that.
Yeah.
So mudras. So I want to share something interesting. So once I was dancing, I was teaching some dance to my students in JNU, and we had a Indonesian team in India who was giving some performances. They had come to JNU too. So I was dancing in one of these porticos, and I had at least 50, 60 students, and we were all dancing. And I was teaching them the mudras basically. And these people came and started watching. These Indonesian friends who visited campus, they came coming and watching. And mind you, even my students could not do mudras like this
Yeah.
or whatever I was showing, But these Indonesian kids, yeah, immediately they would look at me, and I was
Yeah, called
and
Nyempurit in Indonesia.
yes.
Nyempurit in Java. Yeah.
Oh, okay. They taught me some names, but I forgot, it was some time ago. I was showing all kinds of things and they could show it. And I was quite surprised. And that's when that was, I think, at least 7, 8 years ago. That's when somebody from our Indonesian girl who was studying in Indonesian language in JNU told me there are numerous similarities between Indian and Indonesian dance forms. So again, about mudras, I told you the hand gestures. Then again, I think in Indonesia too, this was danced in religious context, and it had a royal audience. People from only the noble, the clan could see the performances. That kind of thing existed in India. However, with democracy, with the modern age, the dance has become more popular. More people are watching it. It has come down to people. Now dance is no longer a matter only that is only confined to royal darbars or temples. It is now popular for everyone to see. And Kachak and Ramayana ballet in Kerala. I think Kachak is one of those ballets that you have, dance dramas, right? Kachak, yeah. So likewise, we have Ramayana ballet in Kerala, which are again dance drama traditions. So these are some of the similarities I found. Can we go to the other one too? Yes. So again, we have the expression part, because otherwise a straight face that they use in Indonesia, in the Western dance forms, Indonesia has a more of a expressive face, a smile. Yes.
Especially belly dance.
Yes, especially ballet. Yeah. So that part is almost similar to both countries. Costumes. Our costumes are most colorful. We will never have a dull color, and extensive costumes with special what do you say, stitching and tailored costumes that we use here. Accessories, of course, I mentioned. We have the golden or the silver jewelry that covers our headgears, our bangles, our the entire thing is similarity. Music, of course, it is very lively. Either it is very soothing, it is like you have in that the Yavala dance. I forgot the name again. Sorry, where they use the body, and it is it's very graceful and elegant. Music is almost like a similar drums and beats. We have we use wooden drums or leather drums or percussion instruments in our dance forms for music. Slow and elegant, fast and energetic. We have some dance forms which are slow, elegant, some are fast and energetic, that I already mentioned. Abhinaya is acting. So it involves expression. You actually act through dances. Storytelling, again, I've mentioned already, every dance tells a story. Not every dance, however, there are dance forms which tell stories. Can we move on to the last one? Yeah, that's all, I think. Okay. So I want to conclude by saying that this is the history and the practice and theory. So what next? So these days dances are no longer are confined only to tell mythological stories. These days dance is more of self-expression, or to talk about even something like a self-determination finds way into dancing, to talk about how the people's movement or the people's story, their day-to-day life struggles, all these things become part of a dance performances. I think in your modern Indonesian dances too, it is no longer about the the external thing. It is more of a elegance, aesthetics, beauty, and it has become popular. It is no longer only confined to one group of people. Only those people won't understand. For example, very intrinsic Kathakali performance, nobody would understand what they are doing. Only somebody who knows the dance language, the mudras and the expressions, they would understand. So dance has come down to people. It actually has come down to people, for normal people to understand, and normal people to perform and practice. The Guru Shishya Parampara exists, yes, but I've also seen dancers who are self-taught, who are learning it from videos, or from small teachers. Even I learned from a younger teacher a dance form called Kuchipudi. So I don't mind that. So that tradition has now modified with the modern age. I think that encapsulates everything that I mentioned. So can I wrap it up? Do you have questions?
Okay,
And I saw many questions coming in through chat. So Lisa, if you could translate them for me.
Yeah, maybe after the presentation from Mr.
Sir,
Jazuli.
sure. Please,
Yeah.
please. Why not? Thank you for listening to me. I wish I could hear your opinions too. It was most of a monologue. I could hear you, Lisa. Thank you so much for responding. Otherwise, I wouldn't know if I was being understood. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tintu, for the insightful presentation. It helps us to have better understanding about the kind and basics of Indian dance and some similarities of Indian and Indonesian dance. That's so good. Okay, now we are going to the next presentation, come from Mr. Jazuli. So, Ms. Tintu, please stay with us. Okay?
Sure, I will be there.
Baik, saya kira Prof. Jazuli ini sudah tidak asing lagi bagi kita. Beliau adalah guru besar seni tari, jurusan Sendera Tasik FBS UNES. Karya-karya buku beliau sudah sangat banyak dan sering kita pakai sebagai rujukan. Baik, langsung saja kita simak pemaparan dari Prof. Jazuli. Halo Prof, apa sudah siap?
Ya.
Oke,
ya.
Silakan,
terima kasih. Prof. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Om Swastiastu. Salam Namo Buddhaya. Terima kasih kesempatan yang diberikan pada saya pada siang hari ini. Namun sebelumnya perkenalkan saya untuk menyapa Miss Tintu. Hello Miss Tintu. Good afternoon. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir. Thank you so much.
I hope you are fine.
Yes, I am fine, sir. Hope you are safe too.
Ya, Bapak Ibu sekalian dan saudara-saudara semua, pada kesempatan ini saya diminta untuk memberikan semacam pencerahan ya tentang hubungan Indonesia dan India dalam konteks kebudayaan, ya suatu perbandingan teori dan praktek. Oleh karena itu tadi sudah banyak dikemukakan itu ada beberapa hal yang mungkin nanti akan ada kemiripan atau kesamaan. Baik. Sebelum saya menuju pada pokok masalah, saya ingin melihat secara historis dulu, dari perspektif historis. Kenapa ada hubungan yang sangat dekat dalam konteks kesenian antara India dan Indonesia. Ya, India masuk ke Indonesia itu kan melalui budaya yang paling kuat adalah sistem kepercayaan, ya, terutama agama Hindu-Buddha. Itu melalui koloni Brahmana, gitu. Itu yang sangat mendasar sekali bagi nanti seberapa jauh pengaruhnya terhadap budaya Indonesia. Kemudian yang kedua unsur sosial politik. Ya, ini sangat berpengaruh terhadap kerajaan-kerajaan di Indonesia pada waktu itu. Ya, jadi sistem pemerintahannya, kemudian ada pembagian kasta itu tidak lepas dari pengaruh India. Kemudian juga ada teknologi, terutama teknologi bangunan. Ya, ini sangat berpengaruh, irigasi, sistem pengetahuan, dan akhirnya kepada berbagai jenis seni di Indonesia, dari sektor bangunan seperti candi, seni rupa, relief, dan berbagai perhiasan, kesusastraan, ada huruf Palava dan bahasa Sanskerta, kemudian beberapa kitab, ya, termasuk dari kitab Ramayana dan Mahabharata. Kemudian dalam konteks seni pertunjukan ada seni wayang dan jenis-jenis ritual yang ada di Indonesia. Itulah yang melatar belakangi sebenarnya kenapa ada hubungan yang sangat dekat antara kebudayaan India dengan Indonesia, ya, terutama melalui tadi pengaruh Hindu-Buddha. Oke. Yang paling kuat kenapa ini saya sorot, ya, saya tekankan, ya. Coba sebelum kepercayaan Hindu-Buddha masuk ke Indonesia itu, nenek moyang kita sudah punya kepercayaan yang menurut orang Barat namanya animisme dan dinamisme. Animisme dinamisme ternyata itu adalah terminologi yang dibuat oleh orang luar, orang Barat. Ya. Sementara di kita ternyata memiliki makna yang agak sedikit berbeda. Ya. Oleh karena itu, karena ada pengaruh budaya, kemudian kita sudah punya kepercayaan sendiri sehingga ada fenomena sinkretisme, perpaduan ya, antara Hindu-Buddha dengan kepercayaan animisme. Ini sangat kuat dan relatif lama keberlangsungannya. Oke, selanjutnya kita akan mengarah kepada apa sebenarnya yang menjadi hal yang menarik untuk lebih dikaji. Next, ya. Nah, ini sekarang lebih konkretnya karena tadi memiliki berbagai perspektif teori. Ya. Jadi ada beberapa hal. Ya ini terutama yang ditulis oleh buku-buku oleh orang-orang Belanda ya. Jadi ada perspektif Brahmana bahwa masuknya Hindu-Buddha itu melalui koloni tadi Belanda dan itu dikuatkan oleh berbagai literatur. Ya. Ini boleh saya pandang sebagai suatu perspektif teoritis Brahmana lah begitu ya. Karena Brahmana yang dianggap memiliki dan memiliki kemampuan untuk mempelajari kitab suci Weda. Kemudian ada perspektif pemikiran yang dia dari sisi ksatria ya. Ini memang banyak ksatria atau para prajurit ya yang di Indonesia itu nanti akan berpengaruh terhadap itu yang cerita-cerita Mahabharata ini sangat terkait dengan hal-hal semacam ini. Ya. Kemudian penyebaran budaya Hindu ini juga melalui yaitu Kshatriya Waisya, kelompok perdagangan. Nah ini jadi setelah kepercayaan atau agama Hindu-Buddha itu masuk itu juga yang paling kuat adalah pengaruh India itu melalui para pedagang yang banyak pedagang di Indonesia, bahkan sebagian yang ada semacam hubungan perkawinan. Ya, ini menjadi sangat kuat budaya India itu mempengaruhi berbagai di Indonesia. Kemudian ada perspektif yang dilihat dari orang kebanyakan orang Sudra kalau dalam terminologi Hindu. Ya, ini juga antara hubungan-hubungan yang ya, diantaranya tadi masuk di dalam konteks perdagangan tadi. Ya, ini pemikiran para ahli yang telah banyak berdiskusi tentang India dan Indonesia. Next. Lanjut. Kemudian, nah ini pengaruh Buddha, ya pengaruh Buddha. Nah, ini memang agak belakangan. Sebenarnya Buddha itu pengaruhnya tidak langsung dari India, tapi melalui ada pengelana dari Cina, ya, yang kemudian singgah di Indonesia, terutama di daerah Pulau Sumatera kalau sekarang. Ini namanya Hastings. Ini melakukan perjalanan dari India ke Nusantara, kemudian mencatat perkembangan yang ada di Indonesia. Ini salah satu dimulainya budaya pengaruh agama Buddha masuk ke Indonesia. Lanjut. Ya, silakan. Kemudian nanti akan kita berikan gambaran-gambaran, ya, gambaran-gambaran tentang bagaimana pengaruh Hindu dan Buddha. Ya. Ya. Nah, ini kita sudah mulai masuk kepada seni, khususnya seni tari. Nah, ini di India itu ada namanya Siva Nataraja. Ya, Siva Nataraja. Itu Siva dilambangkan sebagai raja penari. Ya, pengertiannya di sini adalah Siva menari dalam konteks kesadaran kosmis, ya, kesatuan dengan alam semesta ini. Ya, bahkan ada semacam paham, ya, yang menyatakan bahwa menari itu satu bentuk meditasi. Ya. Makanya suatu cara untuk pengumpulan energi ilahi melalui meditasi, sarannya adalah dengan cara menari. Memang secara filosofis kondisi ini dia disebut sebagai mukti, ya, penyatuan kebenaran antara kebenaran, kesucian, dan keindahan. Nah, pelepasan jiwa dalam diartikan sebagai upaya untuk meraih puncak kesadaran kosmis. Inilah sebenarnya inti dari jiwa Nataraja. Ya, sehingga untuk membimbing jiwa menyadari hakikat hidup dalam rangka pencapaian kesadaran tertinggi. Ya. Ini bagi penari-penari yang sudah memiliki keunggulan tertentu, memang hal ini pernah dirasakan bila kita menari sampai merasakan ada trance, ya, itu sebenarnya adalah satu bentuk meditasi. Ya. Mungkin di antara Bapak Ibu atau para mahasiswa yang pernah mengalami semacam itu. Dan itu pernah juga saya alami sebagai seorang penari dulu. Jadi menari itu seakan-akan saya sudah tidak berpikir apa-apa, mengalir saja. Dan itu ternyata tidak pernah salah. Lihat orang tidak pernah salah. Inilah esensi. Saya menjadi ada sedikit kepercayaan bahwa memang benar kalau menari dengan sungguh fokus, ya, itu barangkali akan sampai ke sana. Oke, selanjutnya terkait kita masuk pada dunia tari sekarang. Silakan. Ya. Ya, ini saya kira ini bagian yang terkait dengan kepercayaan Hindu tadi, Hindu Buddha, ya. Saya kira sudah atau berimplikasi terhadap fenomena yang telah saya jelaskan tadi soal perspektif Brahmana, ya. Jadi kemudian ya ini hanya sekedar pengetahuan saja supaya bahwa di dalam konteks kepercayaan Hindu itu memang ada beberapa dewa yang sangat berpengaruh, Brahma, Wisnu, Siwa. Brahma sebagai pencipta, Wisnu sebagai pemelihara yang bijaksana terhadap alam, dan Siwa ini sebagai dewa penghancur. Menghancur bukan dalam pengertian yang negatif, ya, dalam pengertian, tapi itu suatu hukum alam. Ya. Kalau dalam ilmu pengetahuan itu ada tesa, sintesa, ada tesa, antitesa, dan sintesa. Ya. Jadi kemapanan itu akan berubah menjadi tidak mapan. Kemudian berubah lagi menjadi kemapanan baru. Kemapanan baru akan didekonstruksi menjadi kemapanan yang lain lagi. Itulah hukum siklus dunia. Oke, selanjutnya ini hanya menguatkan perspektif tadi aja. Ini saya kira ini menjadi sangat penting untuk kita masuk dalam dunia perkembangan tari di Indonesia. Nah, tari di Indonesia itu masuk ke Indonesia itu melalui kerajaan, ya, di mana para raja waktu itu ada hubungan, ya, kepercayaan tadi Hindu Buddha, sehingga itu akan mempengaruhi karya seni yang ada di dalam konteks hubungan itu. Selain itu, di dalam agama Hindu sendiri, tari memiliki peranan penting, terutama untuk upacara-upacara yang bersifat ritual. Nah, dalam konteks inilah sebenarnya karya tari di Indonesia melalui kerajaan atau istana tadi melalui perkembangan yang luar biasa. Dan mulai ada standarisasi, ada nilai-nilai estetika, ada nilai-nilai keindahan yang memang sengaja dibentuk oleh kalangan istana. Baik itu melalui gerak-gerak tari, ya, yang sudah mulai distandarisasikan menjadi pedoman, menjadi pakem, ya. Nanti akan terlihat dalam di istana Jawa yang saya tahu, ya, istana Jawa. Kemudian fungsi tari juga berkembang, yang waktu itu hanya sebagai ritual, ini sudah mulai kepada hiburan ketika masuk pada kerajaan-kerajaan di Indonesia. Kemudian cerita-cerita itu pun juga mengilhami, ya, menginspirasi dalam drama tari di Indonesia, baik itu yang dari kitab Mahabharata Walmiki, Ramayana Walmiki, ya, kemudian cerita Panji. Demikian juga iringan. Tadi sudah sedikit banyak juga diuraikan oleh itu, ya, kemiripan itu. Ya, mari kita lanjutkan kemiripan itu. Ya. Ya, salah satu bukti, ya, salah satu bukti standarisasi tadi dari India itu ada Natya Sastra yang ditulis oleh Bharatamuni. Tadi sudah dikemukakan oleh Wisnu, ya. Saya tidak mengulang, ya. Jadi di situ ada 64 motif, ya, gerak. Ya. Nah, motif-motif itulah menginspirasi seni tari di Indonesia, ya. Paling tidak pada saat kerajaan berdiri itu sudah ada penulisan tentang tari, ya. Sudah mulai ada penulisan tentang tari, meskipun mungkin tidak sedetail sekarang, ya. Kalau sekarang ini lebih di akademik ada notasi tari, notasi Laban notation gitu, ya. Itu memang bisa lebih detail, tapi juga rumit, ya. Nah, di Jawa, ya, di Istana Jawa itu ada dua, Surakarta dan Yogyakarta. Ya, di literatur tari Jawa Surakarta itu ada buku namanya Serat Kredo Wiyanggo, ya, gitu, yang tulis oleh Sastro Kartiko. Ya, ini uraian tentang suatu gerak tari, sikap tari. Kemudian ada Pedeman Bekso yang namanya Hasta Sawondo. Kemudian ada Kagunan Jawi Bab Bekso, ditulis oleh Raden Mas Yohan Bekso dan Sastro Reno. Ada juga tulisan tentang Ajar Joget, itu di Istana, waktu itu di Istana Surakarta. Kemudian di Yogyakarta itu juga ada literatur tentang tari klasik gaya Yogyakarta yang ditulis oleh GWAP Suryo Bromto. Kemudian ada Babat Lan Mekaring Joget Jawi. Nah, munculnya tulisan inilah sebenarnya dari istana. Ya, itulah mulainya sebenarnya penulisan tari sudah dimulai masa-masa kerajaan. Ya, mungkin jauh sebelum istana ini ya, di Surakarta maupun Yogyakarta. Jauh sebelumnya mesti juga ada. Nah, pedoman atau apa ya, semacam standarisasi itu dalam bentuk tadi. Misalnya saya contohkan di sini gaya Surakarta, ya, Istana Surakarta Hasta Sawondo, ada pancak, ada pacak, ada luwes, ada wilet, ya. Itu apa? Sebenarnya bagaimana pancak itu menari dengan harus memiliki tujuan menari. Pancak harus sesuai dengan perannya, ya. Juga harus luwes, harus harmonis. Ada wilet itu semacam kreativitas. Jadi bagi teman-teman yang pernah menari, tentu ketika menarikan sesuatu itu ada muncul kreativitas pribadi. Nah, itulah namanya wilet. Ya, ada lulut. Kemudian di Yogyakarta itu ada namanya Kawruh Joget Mataram. Jadi untuk menjadi penari yang baik, gaya Yogyakarta itu harus mengabdi dirinya dengan itu sawiji, greget, sengguh, uramingkuh. Ini estetikanya. Kalau ingin menari dengan baik, harus punya disikat dilandasi oleh sikat sawiji, harus fokus. Ya. Harus fokus ketika melakukan sesuatu itu harus fokus. Kemudian greget, harus bisa mengendalikan diri. Ya. Harus bisa mengendalikan diri. Kemudian ada semangat, dan orang minggu itu maksudnya ada tanggung jawab. Sebenarnya filosofi yang ada di tari ini dalam kehidupan sehari-hari bisa diterapkan. Contohnya ketika kita bekerja, tentu kita harus mengalami mengapa kita bekerja, ya, untuk apa kita bekerja. Kemudian kita harus fokus pada pekerjaan kita. Ya. Kalau kita fokus, kemudian kita punya semangat, ya, tentu kita akan minta tanggung jawab. Dan insya Allah itu akan bisa berhasil pekerjaan. Nah, ini sebenarnya di dalam tari-tari ini motif-motif karena memiliki nama, kemudian ada landasan teoritis lah kalau akademik, ya, ada semacam itu sebenarnya bisa diterapkan dalam kehidupan sehari-hari. Inilah yang menarik. Kenapa tarian di istana itu kadang-kadang dianggap sulit? Ya, memang ada tatanan, ya, sudah ditata sedemikian rupa, ya, sebagai pedoman. Tapi pedoman sebagai pedoman, ya, bukan sesuatu yang kaku, namanya pedoman. Ya. Pakem itu juga bisa hanya semacam apa ya, ancar-ancar bahwa kalau menari yang baik seperti ini. Nah, ini satu bukti bahwa pengaruh India melalui agama kemudian ke kerajaan, ya, tentu kerajaan akan mewarnai kehidupan kerajaan itu sendiri, termasuk juga di dalam kesenian. Oke, lanjut. Kemudian selanjutnya, ya mohon slide-nya bisa diteruskan. Nah,
udah, Prof, ya, ini kadang delay sinyalnya.
Ya.
Jadi
kemudian ini contoh lagi, ya. Ini bukti bahwa pengaruh Hindu itu di Candi Prambanan itu banyak relief, ya, relief. Ini menampilkan ini cerita Ramayana yang saya contohkan, ini cerita Ramayana. Ya. Nah, di situ bagaimana Rahwana menunggangi raksasa bersayap, ya, raksasa bersayap dengan burung jatayu, kemudian untuk menolong burung jatayu untuk menolong Sita. Ya. Kemudian ada bagaimana Rama memanah kijang buruannya. Ini satu contoh pertama dari cerita itu sudah terinspirasi oleh karya Ramayana Valmiki. Nah, itu dari kemudian bentuk-bentuk ceritanya digambar di dalam candi itu. Oke. Ada lagi contoh lain seperti di bawah ini. Coba kita nunggu slide ini, agak terlambat slide-nya. Nah, ini contoh. Nah, inilah ekspresi ketika diekspresikan dalam satu bentuk drama tari Ramayana, yang itu namanya balet Ramayana, itu semacam di latar belakangnya aja Candi Prambanan. Oke, lanjut. Ya, ini kemudian ini di relief, itu mirip di dalam relief candi. Ya, tangan, ya, sikap tangan. Ya, tadi dikatakan mesti ada sikap semacam ngerayung, kalau di kita ada ngerayung. Ternyata di Jawa itu banyak sekali, tidak hanya ngerayung, ada ngiting, ada nyempurip, ya. Kemudian namanya ada lagi yang jarang diketahui, namanya sapu lebu. Ya, sapu lebu membersihkan debu. Ini banyak sekali sikap semacam itu di dalam tadi babat yang saya tunjukkan di Sido Yanggo, ya, atau ajar joget tadi ada di situ. Memang kita sudah memiliki catatan tari. Ya, di istana sudah ada catatan tari. Ini contoh sikap dan gerak tari di tari Bali. Ya, kemudian di contoh di tari Jawa, ini sikap tangan ya, yang baru saja saya jelaskan tadi. Ada ukel ya, ada ngerayung, sikap kaki. Ini kita bisa lihat bagaimana bentuk relief. Ada kemiripan di situ. Ya, ada kemiripan antara apa yang tertera di relief sebagai candi Hindu maupun candi Buddha dengan gerak tari yang berkembang di Indonesia, terutama di Jawa ya. Kemudian pembakuan, nah tadi saya kembali lagi di dalam penulisan tari di Indonesia yang dalam di Istana Jawa itu ada pembagian karakter, ya. Yang di pojok kiri itu tari Bedoyo, itu halus putri, tapi lebih lemah lembut. Nah, kemudian kalau sebelah kanannya itu tari Serimpi, itu agak istilah Jawanya itu lanyap agak nyentil ya. Kemudian di bawah itu ada karakter gagah, kesatria gagah dukungan. Ya. Kemudian itu ada contoh perbandingan antara tokoh Bambang Cakil, Arjuna dan Cakil. Itu karakter. Ya. Itu karakter. Contoh karakter. Jadi di Indonesia itu memang sebenarnya sudah ada. Ya. Sudah ada penulisan tentang tari, kemudian pembagian karakter ya, pembedaan karakter setiap tari menurut perannya, ya. Apalagi kalau itu menggunakan cerita, ya. Tentu kita akan kembali kepada tadi pedoman menari tadi yang di Jawa saya tunjukkan di Keraton Surakarta dan di Yogyakarta tadi. Kemudian yang di luar istana seperti apa contohnya? Di situ di luar istana juga berkembang tari-tarian yang disponsori oleh masyarakat. Di luar istana itu juga berkembang tari semacam ini. Saya contohkan tari jaranan. Ya. Kemudian bentuk-bentuk drama tari ini mengambil dari cerita Panji. Ya. Di bawah itu cerita Panji, ora-araan, reok gitu ya. Kemudian sekarang yang sebenarnya waktu itu yang paling terkenal adalah teledek. Ya. Yang sekarang menjadi tari semacam gambyong. Ya. Tari teledek itu yang berkembang di luar istana. Ya. Jadi meskipun tari itu berkembang di istana, tapi di luar istana juga memiliki kesenian-kesenian masyarakat kebanyakan atau rakyat. Makanya orang saya menyebut kalau tari istana ini sebagai jenis tarian klasik. Ya, karena mungkin sekarang sudah tidak ada istana atau istana itu sudah tidak mencakup kekuasaan budaya, mungkin sudah tidak relevan kalau kita memberikan antara tarian dan rakyat. Semua adalah tarian Indonesia. Semua adalah tarian Nusantara sekarang. Dari paparan tadi bisa saya simpulkan bahwa secara makro pengaruh budaya Hindu terhadap budaya Indonesia termasuk kesenian dalam hal ini tari, adanya terjadi proses akulturasi atau sekurang-kurangnya memberi inspirasi lah tarian budaya India itu melalui otoritas kerajaan dan agama. Pengaruh itu sekurang-kurangnya telah menimbulkan atmosfer ya, situasi tertentu bagi perkembangan seni di Indonesia. Kemudian secara mikro ya, ada indikasi kemiripan jenis seni yang berkembang di India dan Indonesia secara sistemik dan sistematis. Ya. Hal ini berimplikasi terhadap konsep ya, ada fungsi ritual, fungsi tontonan, juga ada sikap, gerak tari dalam bentuk simbolis. Dan yang lebih menarik lagi bahwa ada penulisan standarisasi tentang tari. Berikut karakter-karakternya sudah dimulai. Namun demikian, bahasa Indonesia, terutama orang-orang seniman Indonesia itu adalah bahasa yang kreatif ya. Tidak mencontoh atau meniru apa adanya. Selalu ada dinamika, selalu ada inspirasi. Ya. Tidak ditelaah mentah-mentah. Ya. Jangan ditelaah mentah-mentah. Mungkin di antara kita semua yang pernah membuat suatu karya tari, apakah benar karya itu betul-betul murni dari kita? Tentu kita betul itu setelah menjadi bentuk tarian, itu adalah karya kita. Tapi ketika kita menyusun, muncul inspirasi mungkin dari tarian-tarian tertentu, sehingga membentuk cara berpikir kita, cara berekspresi kita, menjadi tarian baru. Itulah menjadi suatu karya seni. Jadi karya seni itu sebenarnya juga tidak bisa lepas dari karya seni sebelumnya. Ya. Seperti hanya dalam konteks akademik, kita menulis skripsi, kita menulis tesis, kita menulis disertasi, tentu kita akan mengutip dari pernyataan orang-orang sebelumnya atau penelitian sebelumnya. Di dalam seni itu sebenarnya kalau mau dideskripsikan secara rinci, juga seperti itu. Ya. Budaya menulis itu sama dengan budaya praktis. Ya, ya kalau kita ingin bisa menulis, ya harus bermodal membaca. Kalau kita ingin bisa menari dengan baik, yang harus mau latihan. Itu sudah rumus. Ya, demikian juga ketika kita membuat satu tulisan, tentu akan melihat referensi-referensi yang sudah ada. Demikian juga ketika kita mau berkarya tari, tentu kita akan banyak melihat, mengapresiasi berbagai karya tari, barangkali bisa menginspirasi kita untuk membuat suatu tarian. Itulah yang terjadi sebenarnya dalam konteks berkesenian, terutama seni tari. Demikian saya kira yang bisa saya sampaikan. Ya, kurang lebihnya mohon maaf apabila ada kekurangan, dan nanti kita bisa diskusikan. Ini sifatnya sharing ya, berbagi. Saya ingin sharing saja. Tentu barangkali di antara Bapak Ibu maupun peserta ini juga banyak pemikiran-pemikiran, ya, tidak menutup kemungkinan untuk memperkaya khasanah dunia tari. Demikian, terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Prof, pemaparan materi yang luar biasa, cukup mencerahkan kita tadi dari sisi sejarah, historis, bukti literatur, sampai pada bagaimana karakteristik tari di Indonesia, khususnya tari Jawa. Baik, Bapak Ibu, saya sudah merekap beberapa pertanyaan yang masuk. Ini kebanyakan memang untuk Miss Tintu, jadi beberapa pertanyaannya sudah masuk. Kita akan coba untuk beberapa saya resum atau saya gabung karena ada yang mirip dan sama gitu. Ya, silakan Pak, bisa bertanya langsung kepada Miss Tintu, Pak.
Oke.
Ya.
Hello sir.
Hello, Miss Tintu.
Hello sir. Hello.
Yeah, I'm Bintang, one of the dance lecturer in UNES.
Okay.
The questions
yes.
for you
yes,
at the first at the prison, the various local cultures have almost disappeared due to the particularly modern culture. What is the strategy in India for that?
Will you repeat the question? I didn't understand.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
yes.
Various local genius or local cultures have almost disappeared.
Local channels, you mean, or
local genius?
Channels, as
yes.
in
Local genius, local cultures.
Local cultures, understood, sir. Yes.
What is the strategy in India about that?
Okay, sir. So most of the folk cultures were oral traditions. These were only passed through mouth to mouth. That is why most of the folk cultures of India have extincted with the particular family stopping doing. So we recently we had this dance form using using your mouth. They have this, what do you say? They use their mouth to hold a lamp stand. So some of these cultures are losing because this is not being passed on to the next generation. So the oral tradition of Indian art forms, for classical, we have books, we have Natya Shastra, or we have other kind of literature that backs the classical dance forms. However, for folk dances, which are from the tribal communities or from the common people, which does not have any religious connotation to it, are lost because these practitioners are either hereditary, they come only in that group of people, and therefore it is not being practiced. However, the central government and the state governments are, there is a cultural ministry which is actually supporting these folk artists and tribal artists to continue to uphold their cultural, what do you say, folk dances, music, drama, or any form of performances that involves folk and tribal culture. The strategy is only thing is to continue practicing it and to support the artists. Most of the artists do not have their, it does not bring any more income. They do not get any more income. The current generation has moved on to movies and series, and so the art forms needs to be, what do you say, encouraged and watched. So that is the strategy. As far as I belong to an artist community where we have requested the government to give us the theater, the movie theaters, to perform our dance forms so that public will come and see it with ticket, so that the artists get to earn it and thereby preserve the existing folk cultures. That is the strategy. Again, we have to codify it, write about it, have literature, have practice. That's all we can do, sir. It's unfortunate.
Okay.
I hope I answered your question.
Okay, Ms. Tintu, thank you. It's insightful explanation. Yeah. Jadi di India ternyata juga melakukan berbagai strategi, mulai dari artis ya, dari artis, masyarakat, pelaku seni, sampai pada pemerintah di sana. Baik, ini sebetulnya hampir mirip dengan beberapa pertanyaan yang masuk terkait dengan strategi bagaimana pemerintah ya atau masyarakat atau pelaku seni di India untuk terus eksis di tengah modernitas begitu. Ada pertanyaan yang cukup menarik yang bisa saya ambil ini. Oke, ya. Oke, silakan Ibu. Oke, Miss Tintu, the next question is come from Miss Riana.
Hello Riana ma'am.
Yes, it's very nice to see you, and
same here.
We are very grateful with your explanation and your information about how the Indian dance influence Indonesian dance, or Indian dance influence the Indonesian dance. Yes. Sorry for my voice. I'm fasting so a little bit.
Oh, no problem, ma'am. No problem. Do not strain.
Okay. I'm curious about what you think.
Yeah.
The major problems.
Yes.
Or maybe you can think it is a challenge.
Yes.
To bring Indian dance moving forward towards the digital technology. So today is we always talk about digital and even like a virtual dance or something like that.
Yes.
So I just want to know about your opinion about that.
Yes, ma'am. So before the lockdown, before this entire COVID situation happened, we artists, we still look for proper stages to perform our art forms, to showcase it to the public. However, in this special situation, we are forced to look for digital technology. However, from what we understand is most of the art forms were lost because it was not recorded either in written form or in video form. So in some ways, some of the art forms require video recording in today's world. So maybe we can take the help of digital technology to codify these art forms, record them for future use, so that future generation who are coming here can have a reference point to learn from. Because there are, like in Indonesia, from whatever I have understood, there are numerous dance forms, numerous styles, numerous genres, Similarly, in India, there are thousands of dance forms. I come from a state called Kerala. I think I cannot count the number of art forms that it might be more than hundreds. Many hundreds. So digital technology can be used by the cultural performers to codify and record their performances. However, as a because we all believe in Rati Shastra, we believe the Rasa theory, we believe that the actual seeing by your naked eye, the performance gives more, sense of, it gives the real pleasure as an audience's pleasure. That is lost in this today's world, and that's a huge challenge. Any day to be dancing in front of a proper audience without any technology gives us the most satisfaction and happiness. That is there, ma'am. And that challenge is something every artist face in today's world. And I hope after once this lockdown is over, all our stages, all our theaters, dance theaters, music theaters, all will be open for public. And once again, and imagine in this time, imagine what life would have been if there were no movies, no music, no dance. Our life during this lockdown would have been terrible. So these art forms are what keeps us alive. So it should be preserved as well as enjoyed face to face. That's what I believe.
Yes, this is also answering my second question actually, because I also want to ask you about how do you agree or disagree with the virtual dance, something like that. So I think you a little bit disagree with the virtual dance, yeah?
Yeah, not really, because I am learning. I teach dance online every day at 8 o'clock in the night. We have a group of people who come and dance. So we are also dancing through, because we have to practice even during lockdown to keep ourselves occupied, to keep ourselves sane, because it's too much lonely otherwise. So we use virtual platforms like Google Duo or Zoom to come and dance together, ma'am. So in this situation right now, it is a necessity. So that is why we are using the virtual platform. Otherwise, we always prefer to be dancing or performing on face-to-face now.
Yeah, the dance has to be moving forward, yeah.
Yes, ma'am?
We have to live with the technology itself to make the dance survival.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Let's use it at the same time preserve our culture, right?
Yes. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Yana, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe Mbak Lena ya.
Mbak Lesa, Ibu, gimana?
Mbak Lesa ya. Nanti kalau ada waktu sedikit lagi tambahan untuk ini, ada satu pertanyaan yang tapi yang sekarang untuk yang lain, Bu.
Iya, nanti dikip dulu ya, Bu. Nanti kita coba melihat waktu. Oke, terima kasih Ibu Riana. Thank you, Miss Sintu. Maybe next time you can make Indian dance challenge, and we will be your participant.
Sure. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, that's good.
I would like to learn some Indonesian dance too.
Okay,
I've been telling Vati to teach me some. Yes, let's do some cultural exchange.
Yes, that's good. Yeah. Okay, next from Clara Alverina. It's about how confidence when you dance. Why dance is make your hobby?
Okay, so I started dancing when I was 3. I was 3-year-old. I in our schools we had dance teachers, so I danced since then. And in between, even if I were to go into studies, dance would always follow me. And somehow life has always pushed me towards dance, and now I have almost become like a full-time, I'm doing my research and in theater, in dance. So life has brought me to all that, in spite of having an academic ambition and all that. Life has brought me towards dance, and daily I learn some belly dancing these days. I learn a kuchipudi. Kuchipudi is a classical art form. I'm a Bharatanatyam dancer. I continue dancing every day. I'm learning a martial art form and a dance art form called Kalri Paitu from Kerala. So it is everyday, part of everyday life, and I don't think I will be able to survive without dancing at least once a day, at least for 1 hour a day.
Now it's about experience in observation. It's come from Ihsan Hatip. Ihsan Hatip, saudara Ihsan Hatip, bisa dinyalakan mikrofonnya?
Okay. Hello, Ihsan.
Hello. Thanks for the sharing. And I'm sorry before my English is very bad.
No problem at all.
I hope you're understanding.
Oh yeah, yeah. I am.
My first question, according to your experience and observation, can the practice of Indian dancers exceed the performance limit?
Except the performance?
The performance limit.
Performance limit.
Yeah. I mean, relate to the discourse of embodiment and performativity. About aesthetics. That goes beyond the performance. Furthermore, it comes to the practice of daily life.
Okay.
And the second question.
No. I didn't get that question. Will you tell me the question? You say the performance, performativity of dance. There is a limit. You are saying?
Yeah, limit to performance. Limit performance.
Okay.
The performance.
Okay.
It comes to the practice of daily life.
Okay.
Embodiment. I mean.
Yes, understood.
The second question relates to post-colonial studies. Is there a relationship between Indian classical dance and subaltern movements in Spivak terminology?
What terminology?
Spivak, Gayatri Chakravorty Spivak terminology.
Okay.
The subaltern.
Subaltern. Okay.
If so, what is the form? What is the form of the movement and what the influence? Okay.
So,
if not, why? If not, why? Okay.
Let me phrase. Will you phrase the question once again? You are saying the relationship between the classical and the subaltern dance forms or the subaltern cultures, and is there a direct correlation? And if not, why? That's what your question is, right?
Relation with Indian classical dance and subaltern movement in India.
Okay, understood. Very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I didn't understand the first question. It's the performance limit, right? Limit to a performance.
Beyond the performance.
It's about daily life, how it affects our daily life. Okay.
Performativity discuss about aesthetics, embodiment. Okay.
Yes, understood. I would simply say you can always recognize a dancer just by the way they conduct themselves. So I think dance has, entered our body. Once you learn it, when you speak, you actually either show a mudra or actually where are you going, So immediately somebody would. So I think it enters a body, and I would say I was a better student because I was a dance student. So they say when you use your left hand and the right hand equally, both your left and right hemispheres are used equally, wherein your memory, your perception, your cognitive senses are used better. So dance, I think anybody can dance, one. Two, dance can bring in about, a connection between your mind, your body and your soul. And that connection is everlasting, and it need not be a performance on stage. Most of the time, even now, we don't perform at all. However, dance is very much part of our life, and dance has brought so much peace inside. It's not physical fitness. I'm not talking about physical fitness. It's talking about the well-being of physique and well-being of mental state and well-being of our soul, if you believe in one. So that is and it does not last only on stage. It is very much part of our self, the essence of a human being. I believe so. And as far as I know, I think every dancer would understand that it is not about that putting the makeup and on stage or putting a costume. It is part of our every single moment of our life. The second question, it is very unfortunate that the Indian classical dance forms only used to address the mythological part of it, the religious and the spiritual part of it. It never addressed the subaltern movements. It never addressed the pains and the agonies of the downtrodden, or the farmers, or the Shudras, or the other community. It always kept others as others. It only spoke. I had a teacher who used to say that Mohiniyattam, one of the dance forms in Kerala, was only for the eyes of the noble, of the royalty. And that is so wrong. And these days, I'm a Christian, and there are times when I have been, how do you put it, looked down upon because I do not practice the Hindu religion. So they think that you are a Christian, why do you want to talk about Krishna? So I thought, it need not be about religion. So these days, you have to step beyond that. And there are small, very small, attempts happening in the form of dance, in the dance field, in the classical dance forms. For example, somebody like Geeta Chandran, who's a very famous dancer in India, who's a Padma Shri awardee, she recently did a dance on Anicca. Anicca is impermanence. You must have heard about it in Buddhism. So dance slowly has moved out of the Hindu mythology. It has slowly we are all trying to make it popular. We are all trying to make it common masses, subaltern. And I also do folk dances, which are subaltern dances. And there are dance forms in Kerala which are possession states. You throw your hair around like you are like so this is how they used to express their agony. The lower caste people, the poor people, economically, socially backward people, they used to throw themselves. They used to even there is a dance form in Kerala called Teyyam, where they use a sickle like a knife, and they like strike their head and bring blood out of their head. So they use body in a totally different way in subaltern this thing. It was no longer about aesthetics and your mudras. It was about you are pouring out your soul, you are throwing your body, and you are going beyond the limit of pain, body, and what do you say? So I have also tried once or twice in my dance forms to show that to the public, to say how the real masses or the real poor people feel about life.
Okay,
Sorry, that was a long answer. Please. Thank you.
Untuk mendapatkan bentuk seni yang inovatif, khususnya tari-tarian di Indonesia, jika dilihat dari segi historis, tari-tarian Indonesia itu punya pengaruh, mendapatkan pengaruh dari kebudayaan lain. Lalu pertanyaannya, apakah memang diperlukan ada pengaruh dari kebudayaan lain supaya ditemukan sebuah ciri khas? Gitu. Artinya apa harus terjadi akulturasi?
Ya, terima kasih pertanyaannya. Ya, sekarang ini kan budaya kehidupan berkembang terus ya. Jadi ketika kita sudah masuk dunia globalisasi, kita butuh pergaulan secara global. Jadi otomatis akan ada saling pengaruh. Justru dalam kesaling pengaruh, komunikasi, ya, berhubungan antar negara itu akan menimbulkan suatu ciri khas di dalam satu negara tertentu. Satu contoh misalnya, sampai sekarang berkembang di tari-tari modern. Tari modern itu, dan kita banyak sekali koreografer dari Indonesia itu sudah karya-karyanya kan sudah berbau barat ya, berbau ya, akan begitu. Bahkan ya memang koreografer di Indonesia itu tetap menggunakan media tradisi yang mereka punya, misalnya dari Sumatera. Tapi paling tidak komposisi, penggarapan desainnya, ya, penggarapan dinamikanya itu tidak bisa lepas dari pengaruh-pengaruh tari yang sedang berkembang di dunia. Tapi tetap yang namanya globalisasi, lokal itu lebih penting. Ya. Bagaimana kita berpikir global tapi bertindak lokal. Nah, gitu, ya. Jadi dengan demikian satu karya seni pun juga demikian akan menunjukkan dalam dunia lebih luas global tadi, kekhasan dari setiap daerah, setiap bangsa itu akan muncul dengan tradisi yang mereka kembangkan, kemudian dikomunikasikan di konteks masyarakat global.
Baik, Prof. Terima kasih.
Ya.
Ini juga ada satu pertanyaan dari Gita Kitnanti. Halo, Mbak Gita.
Ya, terima kasih. Alhamdulillah bisa langsung bertanya. Ya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Prof, tadi dari dalam slide PowerPoint, itu Profesor bilang bahwa akulturasi budaya antara Indonesia dan India itu terjadi dari masa yang lalu sampai hari ini mungkin saja terjadi. Nah, saya minta pendapat Profesor tentang akulturasi yang terjadi antara Indonesia dan India yang terjadi di masa era industri ini, teknologi ini. Kira-kira bentuknya apa saja yang menurut Prof. Jazuli lihat di zaman now? Terima kasih.
Iya, kalau sekarang konteksnya sudah berbeda ya. Saya tadi bicara dari sejarah, karena ada akulturasi. Mungkin sekarang bukan lagi akulturasi, bukan lagi perbuduan, mungkin saling memberi inspirasi. Beda lagi ya. Kalau kita mengkaji perkembangan tari khususnya, itu jenis-jenis kesenian kita itu sudah tidak lagi akulturasi. Karena tadi yang baru saja saya katakan, kita berkembang dalam masyarakat global. Ya. Di samping masing-masing bangsa ingin menunjukkan jati diri. Ya. Tentu juga harus mempertimbangkan pasar dunianya bagaimana kalau dalam dunia perdagangan. Ya. Kita punya produk, kira-kira produk itu untuk pasarkan di dunia itu memiliki ketasan enggak? Nah, inilah konteks yang saya katakan berbeda karena sekarang tidak lagi dua budaya. Sekarang kita sudah mendunia. Jadi saling mempengaruhi itu sangat mungkin. Contoh-contoh sebenarnya bukan akulturasi ya, kalau saya sudah mengatakan itu inspirasi sekarang karena sangat kompleks. Budaya setiap negara itu punya budaya kesenian khas sendiri. Selandia Baru, daerah Eropa juga banyak tradisi yang ada di sana khas sana. Itu juga akan mengaruhi, paling tidak kalau tidak ya di dalam tari itu gedaknya mungkin kostumnya ya, termasuk China itu banyak menginspirasi ya. Karya-karya ya, tarian Cina itu menginspirasi pertama kostumnya. Nah, itu akan memberikan pengaruh terhadap Indonesia juga. Mungkin tidak hanya Indonesia, yang lain pun juga ada pengaruh di negara lain gitu. Karena kita sudah komunikasinya antar bangsa di dunia dan sangat kompleks ya. Jadi saya tidak bisa menunjukkan bahwa karya ini pengaruh dari negara, tidak bisa sekarang. Sekarang itu sudah satu karya koreografi tertentu itu tidak hanya dari Cina, mungkin dari tari-tarian modern di Amerika, ya, mungkin juga tarian yang berkembang di Eropa. Mereka saling mempengaruhi. Kemudian mungkin di Indonesia kemudian dari teman-teman koreografer itu karena banyak belajar dari luar, paling tidak referensi dari luar, sehingga akan mempengaruhi cara mereka berkarya maupun bentuk karya. Ya. Jadi kita sekarang tidak lagi akulturasi, mungkin bisa asimilasi atau mungkin difusi ya. Kalau dalam pengembangan, difusi mungkin gitu. Jadi udah bukan akulturasi lagi.
Oke.
Ya.
Terima kasih, Prof.
Ya.
Penjelasannya ini masih berkaitan dengan pertanyaan dari Saudara Rian Hidayatullah. Mungkin saya bacakan saja. Jadi bagaimana pandangan dan prediksi Prof. Jazuli mengenai kelanjutan dunia tari khususnya menghadapi new normal ini dalam kondisi pandemi semacam ini?
Ini pertanyaannya aktual sekali nih situasinya. Yang mudah-mudahan ini tidak berlanjut, situasi segera selesai ya. Sehingga kita bisa lebih berkarya, lebih karya-karya yang diputarkan oleh teman-teman dari Indonesia itu lebih aktual, bisa dinikmati. Sementara itu kan lewat viral. Memang kalau pandemi ini terus, tentu karya-karya itu akan muncul melalui viral, jelas itu. Ya. Dan tentu di situ justru banyak kebebasan untuk berkarya. Tapi persoalannya, persoalan kembali kepada siapa yang mau mengonsumsi, sejauh mana selera masyarakat mau mengonsumsi karya-karya tari melalui viral. Mungkin di antara banyak teman-teman yang berkarya itu mungkin 1, 2, 3 mungkin ada yang menarik, itulah yang akan laku di pasar, akan banyak ditonton. Seperti hanya YouTube kan, semakin banyak orang menonton satu karya tertentu di YouTube itu, bahwa itu sesuatu yang menarik atau menyangkut selera masyarakat luas. Ya ke depan, kalau prediksi, saya berharap prediksi saya ini pandemi ini segera selesai, rampung gitu. Jadi sementara ini kan teman-teman yang berkarya seni itu menyesuaikan situasi dan kondisi. Ya. Mudah-mudahan pandemi ini sudah selesai, bisa berkarya seperti biasa. Ke depan saya kira akan selalu ada dialog budaya. Ya. Sementara ini kan berhenti. Ya.
Ini ada pertanyaan lagi dari Pak Bintang, Prof. Mengenai bagaimana strategi adaptasi tari Jawa dengan adanya pengaruh dari India.
Sekarang ini begini ya, kembali tadi kita itu sekarang hidup dalam dunia yang global. Ya. Jadi tari Jawa pun sekarang adaptasinya tidak sekedar dari India saja, dari mana-mana. Gitu. Jadi itu yang sekiranya relevan dengan budaya tari itu sendiri. Semula memang dengan India, tapi sekarang ini coba kalau kita melihat karya-karya tari teman-teman kita di Indonesia ini, khususnya di Jawa, itu sudah tidak lagi nampak keindiannya. Justru komposisinya sudah dari tari-tari modern itu ya. Masa sih ada sih tari Jawa yang sampai loncat? Kalau menurut pedoman tari Jawa tidak ada. Sampai membuka tangan sampai apa? Tapi ya kelihatan, maaf ya. Itu tidak ada di tari Jawa kalau kita mengikuti aturan Jawa. Tapi kita itu sudah dicampur. Jadi sekarang adaptasinya tari Jawa itu sudah mengglobal. Ya entah itu dari mana, ya. Dari mana saja. Maksudnya dari mana itu, dari negara manapun. Yang sekiranya kira-kira bisa disinkronkan dengan tari Jawa, itu akan menjadi modal untuk mengembangkan tari Jawa. Ya. Jadi kita sudah tidak lagi India minded. Ya. Zaman sekarang sudah tidak satu negara, bahkan berbagai negara sudah ikut mempengaruhi. Ya. Dan itu tidak hanya terjadi di tari Jawa, di tari Sumatera pun, atau di tari-tari di luar Jawa, mungkin di daerah Pulau Nusantara ini juga begitu. Dia tidak mungkin hanya melihat dari satu negara, mereka akan melihat dari berbagai negara, apalagi kalau mereka sering komunikasi. Ya. Biasanya, misalnya mengikuti misi kesenian, di situ ada dialog budaya. Tentu mereka pulang ke Indonesia akan bikin karya. Kemarin ada tarian dari mungkin dari dari Portugis, bagus misalnya. Itu akan memberikan inspirasi. Nah, inilah yang saya katakan dialog budaya itu bukan lagi dialog antar satu dua negara, tapi dengan berbagai negara. Jadi adaptasinya ya di situ. Sejauh mana berkarya, itu tergantung kreatornya, bagaimana dia beradaptasi. Semakin dia banyak berkomunikasi dengan bangsa-bangsa lain, termasuk ketika berdialog kesenian, itu akan menginspirasi karya-karyanya selanjutnya. Itulah yang saya katakan, adaptasinya tidak hanya satu dua negara, banyak yang lain.
Ya, terima kasih Prof. Lantas tentunya ada banyak benturan-benturan ya Prof. Jadi dengan adanya budaya-budaya yang masuk, kemudian apalagi di tengah pandemik semacam ini, lalu belum lagi bersinggungan dengan teknologi ya. Kalau kita bilang teknologi, akhir-akhir ini nampaknya banyak sekali diselenggarakan challenge ya. Jadi seperti halnya misalnya Mas Rianto mengadakan challenge Lengger. Nah ini menjadi salah satu terobosan untuk selain mengisi aktivitas di tengah-tengah pandemik, juga mengenalkan budaya tari-tarian tradisi khususnya Lengger ke seluruh masyarakat bahkan ke dunia karena beliau sekarang di Jepang. Nah, menurut pendapat Prof dengan adanya terobosan semacam ini, optimiskah Prof jika ke depan kesenian kita masih terus berlanjut, masih terus eksis begitu?
Ya, kalau fenomenanya memang ini sebenarnya tantangan buat kita semua, terutama yang bidang kesenian. Memang bentuk karyanya akan berbeda, karena yang menikmati itu tidak lagi berbarengan, tapi setiap individu bisa menikmati. Tapi justru ini kesempatan yang bagus kalau katakan dalam para seniman kita itu bisa memanfaatkan ini. Oleh karena itu sekarang tidak harus kita seniman harus gaptek, justru sekarang harus Ya, itu salah satu media untuk berkomunikasi, harus menguasai IT ya. Walaupun kadang-kadang kalau untuk seusia saya mungkin agak gaptek itu wajar gitu. Tapi yang muda-muda ini justru harus menguasai IT. Itu sebagai media untuk kita berkomunikasi dengan orang lain. Melalui itulah bagaimana media itu diolah untuk mendukung karya-karyanya setiap kita gitu. Jadi di antara kita karya justru didukung oleh IT. Dan sekarang itu saya kira kemarin ada beberapa saya lihat karya-karya teman dari Jawa Timur itu membuat karya di rumah gitu. Itu ternyata ya kelemahannya menurut saya waktu itu saya lihat ini bagus, tapi karena kurang menguasai IT teknologi sehingga kesannya biasa-biasa. Padahal idenya bagus. Nah inilah yang barangkali seniman-seniman kita atau seniman akademik atau non akademik harus banyak bergaul dengan IT teknologi, karena dengan IT itu bisa kita manfaatkan untuk mendukung karya-karya kita. Dan ini kesempatan, dan ke depan ya optimis, memang dunia kita ke depan harus semacam ini gitu. Sekarang ini sajalah kita seminar dengan viral begini. Ini kan komunikasi hanya tidak mungkin kita ketemu. Nah, dan kita ketemu, makanya kalau kita menjelaskan, berbicara harus jelas. Mungkin kalau kita ketemu bisa tatap muka, kita tahu. Memang teknologi juga punya kelemahan ya, seperti statement Albert Marcus itu. Teknologi itu mempermudah manusia, tapi juga menjauhkan manusia dari manusia. Nah, itu secara emosional kan begitu. Nah, oleh karena itu, makanya mari kita teknologi itu kita menggunakan untuk berkomunikasi, sekaligus menciptakan etika baru dalam berkomunikasi melalui media, termasuk dalam berkarya seni. Itu saya kira ini menjadi PR buat kita semua, bagaimana kita beretika melalui karya seni yang dikemas dalam satu IT teknologi tertentu. Ini menjadi tantangan sama. Demikian saya kira.
Ya, terima kasih Prof. Menarik. Terakhir, beretika dengan karya seni. Sangat bagus. Ini nampaknya banyak pertanyaan yang mengarah ke kondisi aktual saat ini, Prof. Jadi mengarah ke kondisi saat ini dan ke depan akan seperti apa. Ya, baik. Terima kasih, Prof. Saya akan lanjut ke Miss Tintu lagi. Miss Tintu?
Yeah.
There are questions is very interesting for you. It's about have you even done Indonesian dance? Have you even practiced Indonesian dance?
No, not seriously. No. I have just
dancing, Miss.
Yes.
If we make some pose of Indonesian dance and then there we will be exchange
sure.
Indonesian dance and then you practice Indian dance.
Sure, we can.
Tidak apa-apa Bapak Ibu ya, sambil senam tangan ya,
yes.
supaya tidak capek gitu. Terus senam tangan. Oke, Miss Tintu, in Indonesia, yes. It's called ngerayung.
Ngerayung.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, ngerayung.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like that. Good. This is nyempurit.
Okay, simpurit.
Yeah, nyempurit.
Yeah. Nyempurit.
Ngerayu.
Yeah,
and then nyempurit.
Nyempurit. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes, right. Yeah. Okay. Now how about Indian dance?
Okay.
Hand pose.
Okay, we have very similar to this. We have pataka. You keep it here. Pataka. Yeah. You just fold this ardha pataka. This one.
Wow,
ardha
it's
pataka.
So difficult. It's so difficult.
No, just
like that.
Yeah. Tripataka. Ardha Chandra. Okay.
Ardha Chandra.
Yeah. So this is Kataka Mukha. You just fold two. This is you just hold it.
Kataka Mukha. Seperti ya, in Semarang it is incup.
Okay.
Just one hand, yeah, like
yes,
that.
Yes. Yeah. We have two. We have one also. We have two also. This is Mriga Shirsha. Mriga is this is a This is a deer, Mriga Shirsha. It is like, it means the head of this. Yes, Mriga Shirsha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Suji Arala. This is the bud, bud, right? Huh. So this is Ala Padma. That is the half lotus. Yes, Padma is lotus, right? So you just hold it like Padma. Just 2 fingers like that.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Padma.
Padma.
The middle finger. Yeah, the 2 middle fingers, and this is Padma. So if you hold this is Padma. Yeah. Do you want more? This is how you depict a king, like a king.
Yeah.
With this is Shikara. Shikara.
Yeah.
You want to do more?
I think it's enough.
Yes.
Maybe next time we can
yes.
our dance.
Sure.
Berikutnya adalah it's a question from Robi Saputra. It's come from Lampung University. The question is about he is very like Indian dance, especially the elements of tradition.
Okay.
Yeah. Dance is able to express and as communication the material.
Yes.
So, what are the strongest elements in Indian dance to communicate with the people who enjoy or who see?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Indian dances have various elements actually. There are dances which are totally about happy mood. There are dances which are folk dances which are about harvesting and all that. When the harvest is done, they dance, they stand in a circle and they clap hands and they dance and to express joy and to celebrate the fertility of the nature. So it's called Garbha. Garbha is, I think you know the word Garbha, I think you have some Sanskrit, it means the womb. So they pray to the Mother Earth for her fertility. There are traditional dances which talks about stories, and I would say if you have to just put it across, it would be storytelling in its basic essence, that there are stories told, whether it is about mythology, real lives, or all that. At the same time, there are many dances which are about celebration. Most of the dances are about celebrating nature, celebrating people, celebrating our culture, celebrating our nation, so celebration. There are a lot of celebratory dances. At the same time, there are dances, like I said, there are dances which challenges our body, and which talks about the inner turmoil and our agony and our pain and the reality. So you can broadly classify into stories, happiness, and the real, dark realities of life, maybe.
Okay, and it's come from Dewi Imet. It is interesting questions about how the fundamental differences or the good difference about between male and female dance.
Oh, male and
about
female
the gesture,
dance. Yes. So there are few dances which only women dance, but all traditional dances, both female and male can dance. I'm a Bharatanatyam dancer, a male can dance, a female can dance. Gesture, mostly women would do a female character. She would do a Sita or a Lakshmi, but a woman can do a Shiva also. Male also can do both. There are artists in Kathakali. The female never used to perform. Only male used to perform till a very long time. Females started performing Kathakali very lately, and in Kathakali the female part was done by male. Even on stage, in theatre also, female women started performing on stage very late towards the 19th century. Until then, women participating in cultural activities which are for general public was prohibited. Therefore, male does not have that problem in India, that there are no specific things like only male does this or a female does this. There are male dancers who does female parts, and female dancers definitely do male parts. So that's not an issue. However, gestures, of course, the body language is different, but for classical dancers, the grammar is same. Everyone does same.
Yeah, how about the gesture of the hand?
All of them are the same thing.
All of them are okay.
All of them are same.
Male and female,
yes. The basic is the same. They might take a different story. The female might take a different story. That's it. I hope I made it.
Nice.
Understood. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Wistintu. the participant is very excited with you. There are some another questions that will ask to you.
Yeah.
This come from Rian Hidayatulan.
Okay.
Ya, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ya, sebetulnya tadi pertanyaannya sudah saya lemparkan juga ke Prof. Jajuli, tetapi mungkin saya ingin jawaban yang mungkin sedikit berbeda dari Miss Tintu. Iya, Miss Tintu.
Tell me.
What is your side or your view about the New World Order in terms of the art society? Because we all know that the world, the global world, it's facing the new order of everything has changed.
Yes.
And then it's more complex and need to be undertaken for a specific or particular treatment.
Yes.
How especially in Indian maybe how the Indian people nurturing or how to nurturing the culture or in the pandemic circumstance, and then how we spread the vibes of the dance.
I get it.
You got the point, right?
Yes. Are you mentioning it only in the terms of the COVID situation or the New World Order since the 21st?
In the global context and especially the particular circumstance in India society.
Okay. So, from a situation where every household had a harmonium and every house had a dancer, things have changed, yes. However, there are few artists who have dedicated their lives towards dance, art forms, culture, dramaturgy, music, and every other sorts of cultural performances. So I am hopeful. I'm a hopeless romantic, I think, and a very optimist. So I know that I belong to a group of students and teachers who are really passionate about cultural activities. I'm a dancer too. I'm an actor too, and I'm a voiceover artist. I give voices for characters in TV and movies and all that, and not proper feature films, short films and all that. So I am hopeful that I know a bunch of people, especially in the cultural capitals of the country. There are things happening, and there are real measures taken by the cultural ministry. Not enough, again. There are small attempts taken by the cultural ministries of each state and the central government to preserve the existing oral traditions, which, without losing it. And there are a lot of funds and incentives and social and moral support given to such artists. That is one thing. In the pandemic situation, trust me, without arts, I don't think many of us would have survived. So that is why we are still continuing to practice. All our teachers are practicing even on a virtual platform, just to keep ourselves practicing and to not to forget our basic har din ka sadhana, we say, our routine, every day that has become a routine in our parts. However, yes, in the new world order, things have changed. A lot of things are moving away from the indigenous cultures, our own domestic cultures. Things have moved on to a global culture of a movie going or a web series or those kind of TV has become some part of it. However, I'm sure people like you who are listening to this talk, I can see almost 200 people or 300 people, in this audience. So that gives hope, and I see that in India too, and that is hopeful.
To make a story short, you talk about the policy or political power, maybe.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Should I talk about the political situation in regards of culture?
Yeah. In terms of culture.
So I would say, like in terms of a nationalistic surge has happened in India in a very narrow-minded sense, and it is going back to the roots and the Vedic cultures, totally disregarding the democratic progressive values. There is one such thing happening. However, the artists who are really liberal, who actually do not stand for any such kind of evils or any such kind of regressive ideas, are standing, up to them, standing up to those kind of nationalistic forces. So it is difficult. Trust me, it is. There are times when these people are silenced. There are times when these people are attacked. A Pakistani singer may not be welcome in India in these days. I'm sorry to be political here, but I can't stop. But
yeah,
we have to be political here. But yes, those kind of things are disheartening, and it is very very dangerous to the cultural ethos of this country, because we have been a country who have welcomed all cultures equally and accepted them, embraced them, and imbibed it in our culture. So coming from that point of view, this kind of exclusivity that only Indian is good, those kind of things should not work. We should be more open and inclusive.
Yeah, I'm sorry to the related of the political power, because if we talk about the scale of the arts and the society, of course we talk about the political power and the most enlarged environment, right?
Yes. You cannot separate it, and trust me, we are all we have all moved away from the mythological religious aspect of it, and we are moving towards the political, and we are we are doing that. So we will no longer be restraining ourselves from stopping ourselves from talking about the political.
Okay, copy that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleased to meet you.
Yeah, pleased to meet you too.
Okay, terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sintu,
Yes.
for the insightful explanation.
Yeah.
And the next question is come from Mr. Tommy. This is lecturer in Universitas Negeri Semarang, about how the perception of teenager now of Indian dance.
Yes, I have students who are children, who are little children, like like 6-year-olds, first standard students. And
are there dance to children?
Yeah. Yes, there are children
and adult, maybe.
Yes. So we know of situations where when they are young, they do not want the Indian dance. They will always ask, can I learn ballet? Can I learn contemporary? Can I learn Bollywood? Can I learn Western?
Yeah.
However, when they come off, like when they are in their teenage years, they suddenly feel that no, I should do classical dancing, because as a classical dancer, you can be versatile, you can do many more things, and there is a interest. And I come from a state where we have school level. At school level, we have classical dance competitions, and these are very coveted prizes. So every household, all my cousins, me, we'll all started learning at school. So that kind of atmosphere still exists, and we are revered so much. I was a 10-year-old when I first did my Arangetam. And trust me, my community treated me like some prodigy because it is considered very valuable that a child can dance our traditional dance forms. So when you're older, you start getting more secular about it. We forget the religious aspect of it, that's all. But generally, there is an interest. However, the numbers might be decreasing, but the ones who are interested are truly interested.
Yeah, okay. And then, why Indian dance tends to always be paired, male or female? Are there pair dance?
Oh, it's not always paired dance.
Yeah.
There are solo performances.
Yeah.
There are male only dances. Lot of male only dances which women never dance. There are only female dances which men never dance. There are dances which both of them dance. So these days, some of them are actually trying to the male dancers are trying to do the female dances, and the female dancers are trying to do the male dances. So there is no the barriers are blurring. Things are blurring. It is no longer only one person doing it.
Okay, and then the last question for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Would you like to practice eye movements in Bharatanatyam dance.
You want me to do some dance?
Yeah, maybe the participant will very excited with you.
Okay.
Would you like to practice eye movement maybe or face?
Okay.
Yeah, face movements.
Okay. let me see if I can put some music on. Okay. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
I can't dance, sorry.
Bapak Ibu boleh ikut bergerak supaya tidak kaku tangannya, badannya. Inilah excitingnya kalau seminar tari, nggak cuma teori ya, kita praktek juga.
Angin Mbak, kena asam urat nggak bisa.
Waduh, ngunjuk obat Bu.
Yang penting enjoy. Oke, nice, thank you so much Miss itu.
Sorry,
keren.
Weh, mantap Bharatanatyam asli India.
Kita beruntung sekali bisa menyaksikan asli langsung dari sana ya. Okay, Miss Sintu.
Yes.
I think this is enough for the session. We are coming
towards the end.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we are coming to the end of this webinar. Yeah. Thank you for our speaker. Thank you for Miss Sintu Joseph.
Thank you so
for
much.
being able to make time for sharing in the middle of this pandemic.
Please stay safe, everyone. Please stay safe. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it was a pleasure to speak along with Professor Jasuli, sir. I really want to read him more. I saw some books of him online. So would like to read his work. So thank you so much for keeping me in the same panel with him. Thank you.
Okay, you are welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Terima kasih juga kepada Bapak Ibu peserta yang bersedia hadir dari awal sampai akhir. Semoga materi hari ini memberikan pencerahan, memberikan ilmu kepada kita. Kemudian untuk pembagian sertifikat nanti akan kita rekap dulu pesertanya, kemudian akan segera kita bagikan melalui link download yang akan di-share di Telegram webinar. Baik.
Terima kasih Miss Nessa.
Terima kasih. Sama-sama ya. Berikutnya saya mewakili panitia. Mohon maaf apabila terdapat banyak kekurangan dalam pelaksanaan webinar kali ini. Stay safe and see you in another opportunity. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Mbak, terima kasih Bapak, Ibu semuanya.
Meriak.
Arumku guring pawiatan instan lamun yoga anyong taberi nastiti mulur nalare jembar kawur sansaya tungkul sanyatane kebaing ngelmu ayu rahayu kang tinemu Jaya Wijaya.
Program Studi Pendidikan Seni Drama Tari dan Musik Fakultas Bahasa dan Seni Universitas Negeri Semarang merupakan program studi yang terakreditasi A. Sebagai salah satu program studi yang ada di Indonesia, Pendidikan Sendera Tasik FBS UNES menghasilkan sarjana dalam bidang pendidikan seni musik dan seni tari. Lulusan pendidikan Sendera Tasik utamanya adalah sebagai pendidik profesional di bidang seni musik dan seni tari. Meskipun demikian, para lulusan disiapkan untuk mampu bekerja di bidang-bidang lain, seperti instruktur, penyaji musik dan tari, pencipta, penata musik dan tari, event organizer, dan lain-lain. Banyak prestasi yang telah diraih oleh mahasiswa Sendera Tasik FBS UNES, baik dalam bidang akademik maupun non-akademik, pada level nasional dan internasional. Untuk mencapai hal tersebut, program studi pendidikan Sendera Tasik memiliki sumber daya dan fasilitas akademik yang mendukung.
Jaya Negara Tasik